I forgot to unmute. So, all right, good morning, everyone. It's 10 o'clock, so we're going to get started with our panel discussion. My name is Liz Novosel, and I am one of the librarians here at CU Boulder, and I support a whole bunch of different departments. And welcome to this session. The session's entitled Universal Design for Learning, an overview for inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility. Before we begin, I wanted to note that people without vision disabilities take in a lot of information from everything around them. So to give this context to everyone who's involved today, I want to provide a brief description of myself. I am joining this session from a colleague's office here on the CU Boulder campus, and there are some posters behind me and a white wall. I'm a white female with graying hair in my late 40s, and I wear glasses. I'm wearing a blue striped shirt and a black cardigan sweater. Great. And so then I also wanted to share a bit more about the Disability Symposium and the CU Land Acknowledgement before the panel starts. So the University of Colorado Boulder is hosting this Disability Symposium to acknowledge that more work needs to be done to improve the inclusion of people with disabilities on our campus. Efforts to improve inclusion must focus on the students, first and foremost, but also staff and faculty. The 2021 CU Boulder Campus Climate Survey Report, which was released in April 2022, found that 44% of undergraduate students and 47% of graduate students reported experiencing incivility in the 12 months prior to the survey. For students with disabilities, these numbers climbed to 54 and 62% respectively, which is not good. The symposium is supposed to be a springboard to help begin a wider campus conversation on how each and every one of us can help improve inclusion for all on campus and to improve support specifically for disabled folks. Also, as one of the symposium organizers, I want to take a moment to read the CU Land Acknowledgement. So the University of Colorado Boulder, Colorado's flagship university, honors and recognizes the many contributions of Indigenous peoples in our state. CU Boulder acknowledges that it is located on the traditional territories and ancestral homelands of the Cheyenne, Arapaho, Ute, and many other Native American nations. Their forced removal from these territories has caused devastating and lasting impacts. While the University of Colorado Boulder can never undo or rectify the devastation wrought on Indigenous peoples, we commit to improving and enhancing engagement with Indigenous peoples and issues locally and globally. And we'll do this by recognizing and amplifying their work and their voices, those of students, staff, and faculty. We'll work on educating and conducting research and supporting student success and integrating Indigenous knowledge, and by consulting and engaging and working collaboratively with tribal nations to enhance our ability to provide access and culturally sensitive support, as well as to recruit, retain, and help Native and Indigenous folks graduate. I am pleased to introduce this morning our panel. So our presenters are Brad Graham, Becky Rex, and Karen Crouch, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves further. So with no further words from me, I'm going to hand it to you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Appreciate the introduction. I'm just going to start off really quick since my name's first. My name is Karen Crouch. I'm part of the Arts and Sciences Supportive Education through Technology in the Center for Teaching Learning at CU Boulder. I am a white female. I have red, you could argue orange hair, and I'm also wearing an orange sweater today. Passing it off to Brad.
All right. Hello from Minnesota. I'm out on FML leave helping my mom out at the moment. I'm an older 50-year-old that's gray, what bunch of grayness all over the place. And I'm wearing a green t-shirt that says, what does it say? It says Love Energy Colorado. So that's me. And I'm from the Learning Design Group and continuing ed. Been around campus for about a decade. Becky, it's all you.
Hi, I'm Becky. I am also an instructional designer through Learning Design Group. I am a white female with glasses and pink hair. I'm sitting on an old vintage couch wearing a fancy soft white sweater ready for fall. It's nice to be here with you guys.
Awesome. And just like in this presentation, if I see, make yourself comfortable. Zoom fatigue is real. We want you to show up however it's comfortable for you today. If there's anything that you need, we will be monitoring the chat. So thank you, Becky, for looking at that.
I am your chat jockey. I forgot to say that. So please don't hesitate to ask questions. I'll either answer you or put them up for the presenters. So.
And we would love a little bit of engagement here because we realize that, we want to make connections and build community. And we also kind of want to know a little bit about what your background could be with universal design for learning. So we're going to start there. We've got some choices up on this slide. And so I'd love you to put into chat A, B, C, or D and kind of identify where you might find yourself. A, I understand the concept. I know how or have implemented it. B, I understand the concept, but I'm not sure how to implement it. C, I've heard the term, but don't know that much about it. D, I have never heard this term universal design for learning. So I'm looking at the chat. Thank you guys so much for participating. This helps us a little bit as presenters. I'm seeing a lot of B's here, guys. So that's excellent. So I think a lot of people have heard about it before, and that's great. And then again, just keeping that chat going. If you could think about a word or a phrase or some connection that you have, what do you already know about universal design for learning? And we have a couple pictures here on the slides to give you a few context clues if you were on the D. And the first image on this slide is of a person coming out of a grocery store. They are walking out of the two sliding doors. And then we also have a person in the same picture utilizing those sliding doors with a wheelchair. And we also have then universal design for learning. And we've got some words here: straightforward, flexible, readily perceived, explicitly presented, learning space accommodates, providing supportive learning environment, minimize unnecessary barriers. So perfect. Yeah, Brad's right. You guys all rock. So it looks like we have got design your class. You don't need to change anything to provide accommodations. Yeah, the accommodations are proactively built in. That's perfect. Different ways of presenting information, providing access. This is great. Excellent. And I think the other reason we like that first image of the sliding doors, if we can go back for a minute, Brad, is that we actually use universal design for learning every single day. So this is actually something that, whether you are conscious around it or not, we have some of these accessibility features. And so really, if you look at universal design, we'll talk about this a little more, but it really seeks to create this better quality of life for everyone, regardless of the abilities. Everyone can use those sliding doors that opened, and it's that thoughtful construction in a built environment. So it challenges the idea, and I think we already had this in the chat, that accessibility is an add-on. And it was actually first coined by Ronald Mace in architecture, right? Being able to see that it has to do with in that discipline of architecture. And then it was popularized by Selwyn Goldsmith in the 1970s, who's an author for Designing for the Disabled. And then we saw the introduction of universal design leave the discipline of architecture and go into education back in 1980s. Dr. David Rose and Dr. Ann Meyer, two researchers from the Harvard Graduate School of Education, incorporated CAST. And we'll put some links in for CAST, the Center for Applied Specialized Technology. So universal design for learning really is a way to think about teaching and learning and helps all students access materials, engage, and show what they know. It's a mouthful. All right, thanks, Brad. All right, so our session outcomes for today, we are hoping to define universal design for learning, explore the neuroscientific basis for universal design for learning, identify UDL principles and practices that proactively support students, understand ways UDL can promote accessibility and inclusive teaching and learning. And then we would love for you all to begin to consider ways to actually implement UDL in your Canvas course, on your websites, in your interaction with learners, however this could apply for you. And then I would like to invite anyone that's participating in this, if you have your own session outcome, you know, in the spirit of universal design for learning, we want to engage you as learners that came to this session. If there's anything maybe as presenters we had not thought about on these outcomes, please feel free to put it in the chat. We will do our best to modify and adapt the information and include that into this session today. Thanks, Brad.
I just think it's so important to make sure that this is for you and you can make it you can implement it. That's the word. Sorry, no, low sleep. But yes, anybody have anything else they need?
I think we can keep going for now, and feel free to put in the chat as anything comes up. So again, that universal design for learning, the approach, we'll be talking about how this is kind of a proactive approach. And we can go to the next slide. And kind of in this picture, we've got kind of an homage to the architecture here. We've got kind of a drafting tool. And again, this is really a blueprint or a framework. Universal design for learning is applied to educational environments. It's this framework to improve and optimize teaching and learning for all people based on these scientific insights and how humans learn. And so on the slide, we've got UDL provides a blueprint for creating instructional goals, methods, materials, and assessments that work for everyone. There is not a single one-size-fits-all solution, but rather this is a flexible approach that can be customized and adjusted for individual needs. And then there are some tenets or truths that you need to buy into if you are going to start using this framework. If you are wanting to sort of learn more and get your hands into how to apply this, taking the theory into practice, here are some truths for universal design for learning, that each learner brings a unique blend of experiences and expectations to each learning event. And so have a reflection moment. Do you agree with that statement? I think we've got learners coming with all different backgrounds and experiences. So that is the tenet number one. Number two, when we design for variability using the UDL framework, thank you. Thank you guys for the chat. That gives me some energy. When we design for variability using the UDL framework, we acknowledge that learners do not learn in one linear pathway, right? And I think about this when I'm taking a hike in Colorado, and maybe this is too Colorado specific, right? But you want to get to a scenic place at the top of a mountain, there's probably thousands of ways to get there. I'll probably take the hiking trail, right, to reduce erosion. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that everyone has to take the same path to get to those learning goals and objectives that we create as educators. And then finally, I get a little pushback sometimes when I work with faculty on this. So again, you know, be critical about this, but have a reflection moment. That universal design for learning empowers learners to maximize their strengths, focus on areas of challenge, and drive their own learning process. And I understand that we will oftentimes work with adult learners. Sometimes if you're working with a younger age group, 18 to 19, you are still in that pedagogy world as opposed to andragogy. At the same time, isn't this what we all want our own learners and ourselves as learners to have the grit, the motivation, the drive, ways to overcome? And universal design for learning builds that into the framework and also assumes that learners want to learn. Awesome. Thank you, guys. So I kind of want to do a breakout because, again, some of these beautiful, you know, being able to have a symposium isn't just about you guys listening to us kind of as passive learners, but I would love for you guys to connect. We'll do a quick breakout room, maybe 4 to 5 minutes. But what I'd love to do is have you go into the room and then introduce yourself, talk about your role. How did you come to this symposium? And then really to think about our university here, what are some dimensions of variability that we encounter among our CU Boulder students? So I'm going to go ahead and open these rooms now. Everyone should be able to get an invite. If anyone needs help getting into a room, just put a hand up, come off mute, let us know. Everyone should have access to that. Perfect.
People are getting great at Zoom. I think we're all learning that muscle memory now. I love it.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay.
Great
this is
job,
going a little
Karen.
fast. This is good. I wanted this.
Yeah, I think we're doing great. And I'm not too far off. I get a little blip every once in a while because of the network, but so far
Okay.
so good with you. Just making
Yeah,
sure.
you're fantastic. I
Good.
only want
It's
to
one
give
of
them
those.
4 minutes.
Yep, you do it. I love that. I totally, because then we can give more time at the end. And that's my thought. Already wiped out some of those slides and I updated a bunch of links that I didn't know had broken, but it was Avid and mentioned it yesterday.
Well,
So I'm like, I'm
so
fixing it.
appreciate you as kind of like a ringleader organizer, Brad. Like I rely on it. Like I
Hey,
didn't look at any Brad's information, just like because you sent it all out ahead of time. I was like, this is great. I don't even worry about links or anything. So
good to go. We are set. And it's all teamwork. You know what I mean? Like across all our silos, it's the teamwork that's the dream work, So totally game for all this. Could you hear me?
yeah. I'm reading the chat. So
Oh, got it. You catch up with that. I'll let you have a moment. Yep.
oh no, I just think it's so cute. How
Mhm.
everyone's like, so I used to work with Pilar, who's in this.
Oh, good.
I have no doubt she came because she was like, Karen, and I used to work with McCall Greenberg
Yeah.
who's in there as well. So
I'm glad Pilar, because I know there's that Pilar, Deborah, you connection, trying to figure out all the links of how things work. I keep my head down and I have my fun, so you do that. I'm
I
psyched to
went
see
into that
Pilar
and
here.
no one had an issue. All I did was facilitate discussion about what's working for some people in their Canvas courses versus what's not working. And I think it's being recorded, so I'll wait.
Yep, I agree. And it's going great. That was my big takeaway. So, yep.
I'll keep an eye on the time. I do
I'm
think
so
it's
glad
the fun part about people connecting with each other.
I think the best part of starting something off that's going to continue for days. So I think it's a great way to go. And I love that introduction, how you had this tenants. That was a really neat piece. I thought that was a great iteration. Way to go. I like that.
For what?
So,
What part?
when you mentioned those 3 statements and you kind of talked to them as 3 tenets of UDL on that
Don't you
earlier
think?
slide.
Yeah, I think you
It
need to
is.
accept and buy into those things before you're even interested in the framework.
It is so true. I completely agree
And
with you. It makes so much
do
sense.
challenge faculty, and I'm like, do you want to tell me that one of these isn't true for you? I mean,
Yeah, I think that's so smart.
and
And you're
it's the
getting people
last
in a
one.
conversation.
It's
Yeah.
the last one where I'm like, someone's like, I teach a freshman level, and I'm like, cool. And they got to be motivated. They signed up for your class to begin with.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was really interesting yesterday hearing the students talk about the really, really heavy content courses are better online for them because they can work at it at their own pace. And then the classes that are a little bit more, discussion based are the ones that are good for in person. So that was an interesting takeaway I had from yesterday. So that's something I caught on from one of the students' comments. Yeah.
All right, I'm looking at the time.
Go for it.
Thought
Yeah.
I put 1 more minute in there for them.
Perfect. The countdown timer works great. Yep. Thanks so much, Karen. Yep.
Oh, of course. 1 more minute to wrap up the conversation. Smiley face.
I broke my glasses, so they're like,
Oh, I hate that. I wore my glasses today and then I was like not feeling it. So instead, I ended up finding contacts in my bag and I was like, I'm just going to put in these contacts.
Win. I love it. I love it. So good.
Right, I'm going to close the rooms.
Great.
So
I'll go back to sharing here in a little bit. I think I'm still sharing, right?
You are. It looks great.
Good.
They'll just pop right back in.
Must be a new update. Remember how they used to knock you out of sharing and then it comes back again? So,
Totally.
Welcome, Lorian. As my voice cracks. Well,
Oh, I liked it. It's like my 12-year-old son.
Hi. We're just doing breakout rooms. People are coming back in about 70 seconds or 30 seconds.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
your
You
timing
came
was
just at the right
perfect.
time.
We were just discussing the variability of our learners. So that was all our think, pair, share was. So all set. Your timing was great to come in for we just did like the here's their objectives, and we talked about setting the stage. So you're coming in for the good stuff now, Lorianne. Thank you.
This is great. And I apologize. I had a meeting that overlapped, but I didn't want to miss all of it.
Awesome.
you're
We're
so
glad
kind.
you're here. Yeah, I
Yes.
just feel nervous joining late too. So you must have, I like that you were like, I'm doing it.
Yes.
All right.
thank
How were
you
those
all.
discussions? Hopefully you got to meet someone new. Did anyone get to meet anyone new that they didn't know? Okay. Sometimes I think that's the best part of these things.
It's
Okay.
a win in my
Insightful. Yeah. Perfect. Well, feel free to come off mute, or you could use the chat too. But I'm curious about what came up in your discussions around variability. What did you guys kind of notice that were other dimensions? Yeah, go for it.
Hello, my name is Avedon, she, her. I'm in my office. I'm a white woman with dark hair wearing very bright pink. We talked about some different demographics that students come from, such as non-traditional students, students who are veterans. We also talked about another aspect of variability being how much support students have at home, whether it's financial support or all sorts of home support. Are they living in a place where they feel safe working, or do they have lots of roommate struggles? And one of us also talked about observing far more self-disclosure for disability recently, which we all agreed was fantastic.
That's awesome. I see in the chat we've got remote learning, those who are physically disabled, those that cannot go to campus due to familial, personal, mental reasons, accidents, takes time to recover. Perfect. Thank you so much for that. Any other dimensions of variability that came up in your discussions? We'll keep it in the back of your head for now. One of the things that I would love to do is we're going to talk about a story, and you guys hit on some of the dimensions that are going to be in our story. But we kind of want to talk about some of the variability in a particular classroom. So the story takes place and starts off here with Melissa, who's on our screen. Melissa appears and she has a hearing impairment, which means she needs all course videos to have closed captions. Because she has documentation of her disability and is registered with Disability Services, CU Boulder is legally required to provide her with this accommodation. However, Melissa has several classmates who would benefit from captions but are not eligible for formal accommodations. Here's another student in the class. We have Fernando. Fernando's an international student who sometimes has trouble understanding spoken narration, but is very proficient in reading and writing English. Captions help him understand what the speakers in course videos are saying, especially when they speak in different regional dialects. Tony is a first-generation college student whose family cannot afford the medical testing necessary to receive formal accommodation, but his high school counselor told him he displays symptoms of ADHD. Captions help Tony stay focused when watching videos. Another classmate, Christina, watches class videos with the sound muted so she doesn't disturb her partner who works a night shift and sleeps during the day. She doesn't use headphones so she can hear her new baby when he is crying. Then we have Emily. In high school, Emily had an IEP, or an individual education plan, to provide her with accommodations, including captioned videos. Like many students, Emily feels self-conscious about her needs and prefers not to disclose her disability now that she's in college. She feels like a burden on her instructors. She doesn't want to be treated differently than other students. She has not asked for accommodation for these reasons. Here's Samira, a highly driven student who takes detailed notes when watching videos. Closed captions help her spell scientific terms correctly so she can quickly and efficiently look them up later. Isaiah commutes to campus from Denver. He uses his daily bus trips to review course materials, and captions allow him to study even on the days when he forgets to pack his headphones. Trevor was injured playing football and suffers from temporary cognitive impairment. He often re-watches videos to ensure he understands them, and captions help him to more quickly locate specific segments he needs to review. Finally, we have Terry. Terry is a visual learner. They feel like they remember information better by reading it rather than listening to it. So Terry always uses captions, even when watching TV at home. So in this particular slides scenario, we're making it to be like a classroom. And if this classroom was a universally designed classroom, all of these students would have access to captioned videos. It would allow them to receive and process information in a way that works best for each of them without having to request to receive individual accommodations. And so the point of this too is that some students will always need and require specific accommodations. With universal design for learning, there's this proactive approach to address potential barriers, and it can actually go a long way to supporting all the students in the classroom just by adding captioned videos. So that is one UDL approach that can be implemented, which we'll be asking you later what you kind of want to do. So hint, hint on that. And then, thanks, Brad. And there is a little bit of this intersectionality between universal design for learning and accessibility. And so while accessibility and UDL are related, and there's a bit of an overlap, they are not synonymous. They are not the same thing. Both the application of accessibility guidelines and the universal design for learning framework are intended to ensure equitable access for a wide range of students. So ability, disability, interest, motivation, background, knowledge, skill. We also both call for this kind of proactive, design-oriented approach, as opposed to reactive, which could be accommodations. Accessible content and learning environments are essential to university designed course, and universal design for learning also sort of attends to developing students as that self-directed, self-sufficient, and resourceful learners, which also accessibility does by providing the ability to even have access to that information. It's just a little bit of a difference. So we have a slide that we put on here, and at the very bottom, we're looking at accessibility, just so you can see the overlap here. And accessibility is looking at those physical learning environments. Could be classrooms, could be learning management systems, right? And we have ramps, handrails, elevators, making sure that someone can get into a learning environment. Accessibility also is really important when it comes to content. So accessible documents, those closed captioning, being able to use some of the technology tools, making sure that everyone can get into that content and utilize it. There's a little bit of overlap with that in the content, as well as some of the learning, and Brad will be talking about this later. Options are big. Having enriched options for engagement, having options for how content is represented, having options for how learners are able to express their knowledge on a particular topic. That can be UDL, can also have a little bit of accessibility. And then we also have UDL has this expert learning. We're trying to build into learners that resourcefulness, knowledgeability, the drive, and the grit that often it takes with kind of failing or stumbling along our paths as learners. So we do have some quotes on the slide here. While providing access to information or materials is often essential to learning, it's not sufficient in and of itself. And we'll talk a little bit about the neuroscience around that and why that is the case. And universal design for learning requires that we not only design accessible information, but also have accessible pedagogy. And we'll talk about this again, so I'll go really quick, but there's this whole multiple means of representation and accessibility. This is kind of where that beautiful overlap and intersectionality is. And that could be providing multiple means of representation of content, right? That is being accessible, and it's also universal design for learning. Accessible content often provides options that benefit a variety of learners. And content isn't universally designed unless everyone can access it. So you do need to have accessible content for it to be universally designed. And those content options can vary, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but if you are putting onto your Canvas course, for an example, a video, and you have closed captioning, and then it has text, there's images, there's audio, you're kind of hitting those multiple means of representation of content by including it in all those different formats, and learners can choose how they want to play around and access and utilize that content for their learning. And the other thing that I think is important for us today is we do want to recognize this can be a paradigm shift. This can be a lot of work. This can be hard to wrap your head around. This could be changing some things in our educational system, and that can take some time. But we now have already discussed in groups that variability and the different dimensions we see it at CU as an institution. That is the norm. That is not the exception. That is the norm. Instead of having students adjust their different learning patterns and way to access the content, we want to change the curriculum and content, not the student, in Universal Design for Learning. We want to look at those barriers and remove barriers to learning. You want to have a tight goal, right? Like if you want to get to the top of the mountain, that's your goal, but maybe flexible means and different pathways for students to be able to get to that goal. And then we talked about this in our class example, that universal design for learning and accessibility, essential for some, really good for all, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and pass it over to Brad. I think that's the end of my slides.
All right, and to follow up on the amazing evidence question about how accessibility, I'm just gonna go back real quick here just to look at this and say, you know, Abadan, you could make an argument that accessibility goes all the way up to expert learning. You know, it really does. You could say that UDL goes down into physical environments because universal design, when we take the L off of it, is those physical environments. So really, it's a sliding scale, and it really is just to represent that we're working together. They're similar apples and oranges, but they complement each other to make a great salad. That's kind of the way I start to look at some of those things to make it quick. Does that kind of help? And I'm game to totally talk about it later too, because you are just such a star. But one of the best parts about these things is you get to meet other people in our organization that are doing amazing things. And Abadan is one of those people that's a step ahead. So thank you so much for all you do. All righty, I'm gonna power. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, there's just one thing I wanted to say. So I think it's a good question. An assumption that learners will have access to computers and the internet. Can we more safely make the assumption because there are so many computers available on campus? You know, so many people have a little mini computer in their pocket, and it is more of a range. However, like I'm looking at the school district where my son goes, and not everyone has stable Wi-Fi. In fact, Brad ran into that today. He was able to get a tower put up in the, Minnesota in a rural area. And I think that, as an assumption, I think we could safely say we don't know that every student has that. There are programs, and that could be an excellent question that you are asking students as they're entering a classroom or learning environment. The other thing is not everything's mobile friendly. So if this is like what they're using, they might be using some assistive technology, but universal design for learning, I just want to make this point, stays relevant because technology changes, and they apply universal design for learning to technology. And so it actually, even though it started in the 80s, it's actually almost more relevant today because technology has changed and it can still be applicable, if that makes sense.
Thank you so much for that follow-up. And yeah, my example is
one more question in the chat too.
Go for it.
Is there any advantage of offering transcripts of the recorded lectures in addition to caption the videos? If it is possible, always. Like I know a lot of people, it helps to read as they're listening. So I think functionality around transcripts is improving. It can be a little tricky in terms of file types to upload those, but if it is available to do a transcript, I think it's always beneficial.
Yay, awesome questions. And I just wanted to point out that chat is just rocking right now. So thank you for all those good things, and thank you for those comments. Yeah, just as an example, I showed up in central Minnesota with 2 monitors, a computer, and thinking I'd be all golden to be able to work well on FMLA. Got here and found out no Wi-Fi in central Minnesota. The network was blocking other systems. So this central network was blocking Verizon, AT&T. And I had to actually go to the CEO and talk about, you are creating a have and have not situation for these students in this society. You want, and so we had to advocate to bring change. So didn't know what I was running into, but I found out that advocation is the most important piece. So I totally get what you're talking about. All right, onward. If William Cuskin was here, that was what I would say. Onward. I want to talk a little bit about the foundations, the scientific basis of UDL. And, we all understand that our fingerprint, our brain is as unique as a fingerprint. That's what our little image is here, is a little fingerprint on top of our brain here. And there is research supported guidelines that UDL is using that really help us think about our learning experiences that reflect and respond to the needs of our diverse students. We're talking about that already. And if we look at this neuroscientific research, it suggests that as we're all as unique as our brain, there are really 3 networks of the brain that we can hit on, and we need to engage all of them. These 3 networks are there, and I'll go through them kind of fast now and talk about how we implement them, but there's a recognition network, there is a strategic network, and then there's an effective network. The way I look at that is the recognition network is really the what of the learning, the back of my brain. That's how I think about that. What am I learning? The strategic network, the how of learning. There's that frontal lobe that emerging adults struggle to build. I have an 18-year-old and a 20-year-old, so I know that's still in development for those students. And that's also where I seem to fall and knock my head out and get a concussion. You know what I mean? So different ways of looking at it. Then there's the effective network, which I'm a feelings person, and I think of effective network as feelings. Why am I learning this? How is this relevant to my life? So those things are really the 3 networks. And if we start jumping into them and we take a look at that recognition network, the what of learning, we're talking about representation. How do we represent that information? And when we think about representation, well, there's content. I'm building a Canvas course and I have content. I'm building a website. I have content for that website. I'm doing a learning experience in the community with a senior citizen group. I'm thinking about it as we go. And so when I'm thinking about that what of learning, the back of the brain, and I'm thinking about what's going to settle into the back of the brain, I'm thinking about representing information in multiple media. Sometimes text works. We talked about how useful transcripts are. To follow up on Pilar's question, I'll put a video with a transcript right below it, so people have the option on the same page of a Canvas so they can get to both things. I'm trying to provide alternate formats for people to get to. I'm personally dyslexic, if I could say it even, and ADHD. So sometimes I don't want to read, I want to turn everything into a MP3 and listen to it. I just drove 14 hours across the country and I listened to a lot of MP3s and podcasts along that trip. And so I totally get it. I really think about providing alternatives for that audio audible information. Are those captions out there? And we have a nice little link to the captioning site we can throw in, but there are a lot of great resources for captioning available for us. For me personally, I use something where I could create an alternative for the visual, for a PDF that someone gives me with a tool called Census Access, where I can say, all right, take this PDF and make it accessible, or take this PDF, turn it into an MP3. Well, there's this tool called Census Access, which is a great tool for being able to run it. You can just go down to the bottom and learn about it. And it's just a great little tool for us. So I do think about that. Another thought for me that was an aha moment, something small I could tackle and then move forward was, hey, I have all these PDFs I throw up for courses. What if I put the Word document instead? A lot of students with accommodations, or somebody like me that's dyslexic, we learn to use the tools that are going to make us successful and get to college. So people probably already are knowing a lot about how to make a Word document or certain tools accessible. We think a lot about providing alternative text, like when we have these images of like the brain, and the back of the brain is highlighted in a purpley eggplant color. There is alt text to that image. And we're trying to make sure that when we use textbooks, we also have digital versions. The even though that book access red shelf thing was kind of difficult, it is the right step in the right direction of being able to provide those access to people. And the other thing I think is so important, and I forgot to put a link in for this, but I really think that it's so important to choose accessible instructional technologies. And if I think about the strategic network, that front of the brain, the how of learning, that's really how are we having students show what they can do, their actions and their expression. And I think of breaking assignments into steps, scaffold those learnings. We're thinking about our learning activities as action and expression. So how do we give them multiple ways of communicating, maybe synchronous or asynchronous, providing back channels like we are with our chat? You know, we want to broaden the ideas of what class participation might be. One of my favorite things is to invite students to be my chat jockey, or to invite students to run a part of class every day, give them some ownership, and allow students to engage the way that they're most confident. Some are some people are introverted. They do not want to talk in class, but they're golden online. They're going to do all sorts of great stuff. But by providing multiple formats for assessment and conversation, we're really giving students to show mastery in a way that works best for them. And when I think about the why of learning, my feelings, I'm thinking about our engagement. How do we get people to say this is important? And a lot of it is giving students choice, highlighting relevance. How can this be relevant to their lives? How do we foster community and collaboration and promote self-assessment and reflection? How important is reflection to this emerging adulthood time? But we can help them by providing feedback that's actionable and timely and keeps on going. We can help by developing those authentic assessments, which Karen is amazing at, and then facilitate the students' coping skills. My daughter is a first-year student. We're talking all the time about, oh, you bombed a test. That's just one hurdle in life. There's many more to go. Life is not linear. You're going to go through lots of different things. So it's those coping skills and strategies that are important. And I'm not really going to touch on this so we can get to something more fun, but there is a UDL guidelines. It overwhelms me. Every time I look at it, I'm like, but if you like some checklists, we have one that's even better for you. The idea of the UDL guidelines in a nutshell is basically that there is a principle, like we talked about. All right, we're talking about the why of learning, providing multiple means of engagement, that why, the emotions behind things. And then what do we want in there? There's a guideline. Well, we want to recruit their interest. How can we do that? We could optimize individual choice and autonomy, or make relevance to their lives, or maybe minimize threats. The fear of the countdown timer on an exam, like those kinds of things could be a good way to go. But really, these are things you can work with us on. The idea is this is the start of a conversation today. We're here to work together. And I want to pass it off for the end here just to Karen to take us home with some good stuff.
Well, I don't know about you. I'm a busy single mom, and some people hate checklists. So if this is you and you don't like a checklist or to be in a box, that's great. But if you are trying to stay organized, and you're working on Canvas, the Canvas LMS platform has partnered with CAST and UDL, that framework, to make a checklist. And so it's kind of a course checklist, and we're going to be providing that to you guys so you can have your own copy of it. But it's really best practices. You've got a group of us who are instructional designers. We're here to give you kind of an overview, but we also want to give you a real takeaway where you could actually put this theory into more practice and implement it. And in this course evaluation checklist, it's rated by 1 star, indicates essential. 2-star would be best practice and adds value to a course, and a 3-star is exemplary and elevates learning. And so at the very minimum, if you want to take a look at this, see how it applies to your particular course, if you are using a course, and see if you can just hit the foundational areas, see if you're kind of checklisting that. And this can be baby steps in a way to how you can implement universal design for learning. Sometimes taking this on all at once can be quite overwhelming. And as former faculty, if someone were to say redesign and get proactive with your course and make all these changes at once, I might be like, are you kidding? That's a lot of work. But if you can just focus on parts of these course evaluation checklist, you will be making your course a universal designed course that will be going to serving that variability that we talked about in the beginning. And then we kind of wanted to have a breakout discussion, but looking at the time, maybe we kind of do this as a group. What would you think? So
I think that's the way to go with our time frame, with 5 minutes to go, and then everybody goes to the
Yeah.
next meeting.
Feel free to put in the chat or come off mute if you're seeing something on this checklist that's calling out to you, that you're like, oh, this is either a 1-star, 2-star, or 3-star idea I'd love to implement. That's something I'd like to look at. Or if you sort of want to say, how would one of these practices change or improve your course for student comprehension, engagement, or expression of knowledge? And I know it takes a minute to look at that. Hopefully everyone was able to get to the link and make a copy for yourselves.
And then you can modify it as you want to do it. And, as I hope one of the takeaways of this presentation, and, as the starter, we're talking about this, is that when you're working on these things, take one at a time. Try one thing, assess how it works, and then try something else the next semester. The checklist isn't meant to do it all at once. It's to help you in your growth as an instructor. You help you with your growth in doing experiences, creating experiences. And it helps us in those times when we're like, why is no one engaging? So that's a great place to help us with that. And thank you, Tina. Appreciate that. Yeah. Great resource, says Aaron. Yahoo. Yeah.
I mean, I know when I was learning about this, I was like, this feels great. Like, I know more about neuroscience, but what would that look like in my course, right? And, I think as presenters, we just want to invite you. This is kind of the overview. We're going very quick. Brad, you can hear in the tone of his voice, he's super friendly. Becky is incredibly knowledgeable and creative. So I'm always here at the Center for Teaching and Learning. We are here as a resource for you. And hopefully this is just the start of a conversation. And if you get ideas or any sparks as you're here and you want to look at it further and you need thought partners or anyone to sort of bounce ideas off of, we are here for you as part of the CU Boulder community. And so if anything, we just really want to know, as you're going through this, before we kind of get to some also next steps that you could do as part of a CU Boulder community, maybe you could put in the chat. You guys have been so good about putting in the chat, what's one thing, again, reflection, commitment, just one thing, those baby steps that you could do right now to implement universal design for learning in your work. And I'm seeing a lot of things here about.
I love it. I'm going to highlight, as we're, just because we're short on time, and I know we all are busy people. If I can get my mouse to go to the right screen, I just want to point out a presentation tomorrow of somebody who started really about 3 years ago doing UDL, and we were looking at really engineering students. What can we do with engineering students in graduate school to better their experience, to remove barriers? And so Desi has just done a great job over the last 3 years of trying one thing and then assessing it, trying another thing and assessing it. So she has 3 years of implementation experience. And I just wanted to point that out for tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. This is such a great conference. It's wonderful to know when the next cool thing is happening. And just wanted to point Desi out as something that's really a good session for tomorrow. That's Zoom based or in person, depending on whatever you want to do. And she'll talk about UDL, but a lot of the other things those lessons learned. All right, I'll be quiet in our last 2 minutes.
No, that's great. And I see that we've got something about authentic assessments, and I'd be happy to chat about that later, but that's giving kind of a real world feel, and that actually really drives engagement for students as far as universal design for learning. And they do have on this course checklist some ways that you can utilize universal design for learning for assessments, which can also be making sure you've got variety, giving student choice. And so I've got student choice board that I'd be happy to share later. But just to kind of wrap up this session, because we care about everyone's time and we're so glad you could take 50 minutes and spend it with us. Feel free to start small. We really don't want, as educators, we're already feeling overwhelmed with the amount of things we're being asked to do. So just kind of a pep talk there. Learn from experience, get students involved, ask the students what's working or what's not, ask for help, be proactive. And then finally, we have a universal design for learning micro-credential. And so if you want to put on LinkedIn, if you want to grow in this area and have a growth mindset and get a badge from Credly, the registrar's office, and put this on your resume, or if you're up for tenure promotion, or even if you are, you know, working with students and advising students, this is open for faculty, staff, and students to earn a badge. So we've got the links in there. We have a Universal Design for Learning Teams channel.
Really, really quick, who is eligible for the micro-credential? Everyone.
Everyone from our community. You
Everyone.
just have to log it.
Thank you, Becky. I
Everybody.
was like, did I say
Yes.
something wrong?
No,
Yeah,
that's good.
you all are. And then we've paused the community of practice for now, but Brad, Becky, and I will be doing a lot of overviews and some additional deep dives. And if you want us to come to your department, or you need, you want to kind of have a, you know, another type of presentation for you, we would be more than happy to do that. So I know that we've hit time. It's 10:50. I want to be respectful of that. Thank you all for coming. So appreciate the engagement in the chat. That meant a lot. That always helps us presenters. So,
and check out Desi tomorrow. Oh, so many good sessions. Thank you, David, and everybody for organizing this. Have a wonderful day, people from Minnesota's basements. Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, presenters, for a really great presentation.
Yeah, thank you. If there's any questions, we're happy to answer. But yeah, great way to go. Thank you, Elizabeth, for the opportunity. That was a wonderful addition. The introduction, I mean, I really appreciated that. Thank you. That was great.
Oh gosh, you're welcome. I was a little bit.
You did
Yeah,
awesome for
polished.
morning time. No, you did
That's
awesome.
okay.
I used to be a high school teacher, and they just had to call me Mr. G because Grabham became grab this or grab that, or you know.
Oh,
so yeah, totally
yeah, I'm
get
so
it.
sorry
yeah.
about the name.
No, it's all
I
good. You
always
can
mess
call me.
that up.
I saw
you
it
can
as
call
I
me-
was saying it. I was like, oh.
No,
Really
as
quick,
they-
who's recording?
I recorded, but I put it on the cloud, so I might need to